Hello and welcome to the Illinois 6th Congressional Democrats and Ballot Z Commit to Vote and Voter Registration Best Practices session. We're going to talk today about how to increase voter turnout for the upcoming election through our voter registration and vote by mail campaign with using Commit to Vote cards. But first, I'd like to tell you who I am, and I'd like to introduce you to Gretchen Coleman. So my name is Patrick Watson, and I am the Democratic State Central Committeeman for the Illinois 6th Congressional District. I initially got involved with politics around President Obama's first campaign and his reelection campaign, where I was an organizer. I was an organizer in Florida, and I was an organizer on a lot of our campuses in Northern Florida. And a big part of our program was doing voter registration. We're able to register a number of students in Northern Florida. And through our efforts, we were able to push those students to the polls themselves. And pushing people out to the polling place is the big part of voter registration. We're going to talk a lot about how to do that. After that, I worked on a number of other campaigns and also for non-for-profit organizations doing voter registration and other efforts. And we were successful in those efforts. So we're going to talk a lot about what we did on those particular campaigns, what we did with those non-for-profit organizations to increase voter turnout through voter registration and getting people out to the polls. But I'd like to introduce you all to Gretchen Coleman. I met Gretchen Coleman a number of years ago when Gretchen was an organizing fellow with me for CVIL 6. She went on to be one of the people that was very key in me becoming the central committeeman. She was one of my field coordinators on that campaign. She handled a lot of the voter contact efforts through phone banking and other activities, bringing volunteers into my campaign. And we were successful. We were able to win thanks to Gretchen's efforts. Gretchen has gone on to be a leader within the College Democrats at Syracuse University. And she's also created Ballot Z. She's the chair of Ballot Z, which is pushing out the Generation Z vote here in Illinois. And I'd like to introduce you to Gretchen. Gretchen?
Hi, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Ballot Z, like Patrick said, is an initiative to increase voter turnout among Generation Z voters throughout the Chicago suburbs, really by making election information more accessible. Here in Illinois, as we're going to talk about in this presentation, we have a really solid voting structure, and a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to register to vote and to request their mail-in ballot online and things like that. So really making this information as accessible as possible through our website and through our social media pages.
All right, thank you, Gretchen. Let's dive into it and let's talk about how we're going to increase voter turnout. But before we do that, I want everyone please to make sure that you follow us via social media. So you can follow me at Patrick Watson83, that's on Twitter. You can follow Gretchen at GM Coleman on Twitter. You can also follow the Illinois 6th Congressional Democrats at Sixth Dems, and that's across all social media platforms. So that's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all just at Sixth Dems, just Sixth Dems. And for Ballot Z, you can follow them at 6D, Ballot Z. Also, please make sure that you like this video on YouTube and that you subscribe to the channel so that you get all the information about a lot of the upcoming trainings and great town halls that we will have in the near future. I'm also going to have a button somewhere along the video, which you can find out about events that are happening and sign up for those particular events. So be on the lookout for that button throughout the video where you can sign up for upcoming events. So voter registration and getting people to turn out to the polls is very important. I'll say here in Illinois, it is very easy for people to register to vote. We have automatic voter registration here in Illinois. You can register at the DMV, you can register online. The General Assembly has made it very easy for people to register to vote. So registering to vote isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is people turning out at the polling location itself for the election itself. If you take a look at this graph, the OFA, or Obama for America, during his campaign in 2018, that was a big focus of theirs. It was making sure that we got people registered to vote, but not only getting them registered to vote, but making sure they turned out at the polling place itself. This chart shows you what happened with the OFA program. People that registered with other organizations or registered online were less likely to actually show up at the polling location itself. You can see people that registered online that went themselves and registered via the web portal. About 55% of new registrants actually showed up at the polling location, and 65% of people that re-registered showed up at the polling location. And you can see other organizations, think of some of the big organizations that do a lot of voter registration. About 66% of them who were new registrants actually showed up at the polling location, and about 52% of re-registrants showed up at the polling location. But if you look at the OFA, people that were registered to vote, people that the organization was able to register, 74% of new registrants actually showed up at the polling location, and about 76% of new registrants. And there's a reason for that, and that's extensive follow-up. If you think about registering someone to vote, especially if they are a new voter or someone that's moved into a new area, they may not be aware of where their polling location is. They may not be aware of the dates. They may not be aware of the candidates. And that's what OFA was able to do. They were able to follow up with these people, let them know where their polling location was, let them know who was running in the particular race and how best to get their ballot in if they were voting by mail or doing some early voting. They were able to follow up with them. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do that extensive follow-up to make sure that people know how to vote and that it's as easy as possible for them to vote. Especially with COVID-19 happening right now, there's going to be a big push for people to vote by mail. And we're pushing people to vote by mail very extensively because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. And we have to make sure that we're doing that follow-up with people, that they know that they need to submit their ballot, what they need to do, they need to sign their ballot, and so forth. And we're going to tell you exactly how we're going to do that through our Commit to Vote program.
So like Patrick just said, the key to success is the following up. And to do that, we have a really easy online way to kind of streamline that following up process through this Commit to Vote form. So this is a Google form that has people fill out their contact information so we can reach out to them and make sure that they have all their questions answered before they get out and vote. So when we're doing voter registration, we will direct them to the online voter registration and vote by mail application, of course. But before that, we're going to have them fill out on this Commit to Vote form that you can see as a screenshot here on the right. So once they fill this out, the next screen that will link them to either the Illinois Vote to Vote, Register to Vote form, or the for vote by mail, that actually directs them to the Ballot Z website because we have it laid out by counties so people can click on their county and be taken to their county clerk's website and to get their mail-in ballot. So yeah, collecting their information is so critical so we can actually follow up with them. But we also want to have people fill this out regardless of whether they're newly registering to vote. So obviously anyone who's filling out this application, we want to get it to them. But if they've already registered, that doesn't mean they're going to show up and vote necessarily. So we want everyone who we can to fill out this form so we can follow up with every single potential voter and make sure that they actually turn up and vote.
And if you think about this election cycle, we're not going to be able to do a lot of the door-to-door canvassing that we typically would be able to do. We're not going to be able to necessarily identify or ID people as we would in a normal year. And what this does is it adds an extra layer that's going to allow us to ID a few people and follow up with them with information about the upcoming election. So this is the QR code that we're going to be using for a lot of the voter registration. The only thing people need to do with this QR code, it's going to keep them safe. They're going to be able to scan this with their smartphone. So if they have an Android or if they have an iPhone or some other type of device, what they can do is they'll hold their camera up to this particular QR code. You can have this on the back of a clipboard, on a table, on a big sign. They scan it and it will take them to that Commit to Vote card that you just saw. Also the link, sixthdems.com/commit to vote will take them right to that form as well, where they will be able to commit to vote. It's important that we get that first set of information so that we're able to do that extensive follow-up. Because if we're just doing voter registration in a vacuum, the people won't necessarily get this particular set of information. And we want to make sure that we have this set of information so that we're able to take this information, we're able to distribute it out to people that are taking ownership over a specific area. This can be done anywhere across the state, and they're able to do this follow-up. We want to make sure that there's not a lot of overlap between organizations, because in a typical year, people can get canvassed at the door a few times, but if we're calling people multiple times, if 4 or 5 different organizations are calling someone, they're going to stop picking up the phone. So we want to make sure to cut down a lot on that by giving people specific ownership over specific areas and using this QR code to develop that database of people who have registered to vote or committed to vote or signed up for vote by mail with this. And just as I mentioned, that data is going to be very important. We're going to make sure that this data is in the voter file itself so that we can do that follow-up. We want to make sure that there isn't a delay in the time that it takes for someone to get registered at a voter registration table and the time that this information is entered into the database. That's going to be very key, and it's part of the reason why Commit to Vote is so important. If you think about vote data that's going to be in the database we use, typically campaigns use, and other organizations use, there's a delay in the time from when someone registers to vote at a table or at an event until the time that that information is sent to the clerk's office or the election authority and then sent and uploaded into the voter file. That could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, it could be longer. We want to make sure that we have that data right away so that we're able to follow up with people and we're able to tie this back into our voter protection program. So if, for example, someone doesn't receive their voter registration, we'll have our election attorneys follow up with that particular person. If they don't receive their vote by mail ballot, we'll be able to follow up with that particular person to make sure that they receive their ballot. We've seen this in a number of other states. We've seen that sometimes vote by mail ballots are coming very late in the process. We want to make sure that we're able to keep track of this and that we're able to have our election protection team, or in other parts of the state where we'll be working with other organizations, have their election protection team follow up to make sure that these people receive their ballot. We're also making sure that we send the information to people that if they're having an issue at a polling place, that they'll be able to follow up with our voter protection team as well. We want to make it as easy as possible for people that are new registrants or for people that are voting by mail to vote and without an issue.
So we want to also emphasize just the importance of safety during COVID-19. So that means that a lot of our traditional methods are going to be less utilized, if at all, because we're not really sure what direction things will look like in November. But regardless of kind of the status of public health, everyone still has a role to play. So there are multiple ways that we can mobilize voters. Some big events, like some of the Black Lives Matter protests we've been seeing, for example, will still be happening. And there are ways to do kind of that direct in-person canvassing safely. And we're going to touch on that at length later on in the presentation. So you can directly register voters that way. But you can also do a couple more virtual options as well, which includes phone banking, either unregistered voters. We're going to have lists of voters who have not yet registered. And once we've collected all of this great data, we'll have the commit to vote information and be able to phone bank throughout that list. And we also have some more personal ways that you can kind of still do that kind of voter engagement. So you can promote voter registration and the commit to vote form that we have on your own social media, which we'll talk a little bit more about later as well. As well as your personal network. So I'm guessing that a lot of you who are politically involved probably have a reputation among your friends and family as like the go-to person for voting. So you're a source of trusted information for that voting procedure, and you can kind of use that position you have to amplify the importance of voting and spread that message out to your personal network. And we'll get a little bit more into that later on as well.
So just as I mentioned, coordination is going to be very key. It's going to be very important that we are able to coordinate our efforts in this election cycle. As I mentioned, people will stop picking up the phone if we're calling them multiple times during the same day. So we have to make sure that we are coordinated. So the back end of the data that we collect from Commit to Vote, we're going to be sharing it out with Democratic organizations or your progressive organizations so that you're able to take over a piece of that data. If you take ownership of that data, we're going to make sure that you are the only ones calling these particular voters doing the follow-up so that they're not flooded with calls on the same day. That's going to be very, very important. We're also going to make sure that our election protection team has their information and they have the information of our voter protection team so that they're able to follow up with them if there is a particular issue. We noticed that last cycle that there were a lot of people that had issues with vote by mail ballots. We're going to make sure that that doesn't happen this time. We're going to make sure that people know everything that they need to know for vote by mail. They're making sure that they're signing the back of the vote by mail. We're going to make sure that if people change their mind and want to go to the polling location, they're taking that vote by mail ballot in with them as well as the envelope so that we don't run into provisional ballots. So that's going to be a big, big part of this program. So let's talk a little bit about some of the laws here in Illinois. So registration is open year round, but there are two important things to keep in mind. That voter registration, regular voter registration with the forms, the paper forms, that's going to close on October the 6th, and online is going to close on October the 18th. But people can still go into a polling location or other specific locations if they're not registered by those specific dates, and they can register on the spot if they have the right forms of identification and are able to register right there on the spot. So that's going to be important. The last day to request a mail-in ballot is going to be on October the 29th. So those are going to be very important dates that people need to keep in mind so that they're able to vote in the upcoming election. And just as I mentioned, we've got that grace period voter registration. Our General Assembly here in Illinois has made it as easy as possible so people can walk into specific locations and register the same day. They just won't be able to register online or with the paper voter registration. So who can register to vote here in Illinois? Anyone that is a US citizen and has been a resident of the state for the last 30 days. Those people are going to be able to register here in Illinois. And something key to keep in mind are people that are 17 years of age, but are going to be 18 by election day. They're going to be able to register to vote. And we absolutely are going to make sure that we register every high school senior, anyone that's 17 that's going to be 18 years of age. We want to make sure that we are registering them to vote. That's a very key demographic that should be able to vote. And we want to make sure that they're able to vote in this election cycle. Also, think about opportunities to re-register people. So for example, if someone has moved, their address has changed, that's an opportunity to re-register them. Also, if their name has changed, if they've gotten married and their name has changed, or they've changed their name legally for some reason, those are people that we want to re-register. Something very key to keep in mind is that while people are filling in the form, this is completely non-partisan activity while they have that form in hand. We want to make sure that we're not offering incentives to people to register to vote. You know, I would recommend if you have buttons or candy or something at your table, you just offer that to everyone. We want to make sure that everything is above board while we're doing this. We've not had this in the 6th Congressional District in the past, but there are a lot of organizations that are out there right now, and they're looking to record and get people to do things that are wrong. So keep in mind that there are going to be people that are out there. They're going to be trying to egg you on. They're going to try to get you to say things that aren't right. If something doesn't seem right, realize that it's not right and make sure that you're always doing everything to comply with the law while you're doing this voter registration. Anyone that comes to your table, you're registering them. I don't care if they have on a Trump pad or something else, you're registering them to vote, and we're going to make sure that that voter registration goes through. We're registering everyone. We want to make sure that everyone's registered and everyone has an opportunity to vote. So don't do anything that could seem wrong or could be wrong or could be used against us in any kind of videos. Also keep in mind that we are not deputy registrars when we're doing this type of voter registration. If you're interested in becoming a deputy registrar, we can facilitate that as well. But what we're doing is we're helping people to register themselves. We are getting them to commit to vote, and then we are directing them to online voter registration where they're able to register themselves. And if we're using any kind of paper ballots, we're getting them to fill in the mail-in motor voter forms where they're registering themselves. We're just guiding them through, making sure that if they have any questions, they're able to ask those questions of us, but they are registering themselves. We're just helping them to register themselves.
So those are kind of the overall voting laws. And then in addition, there have been some new kind of new add-ons this summer, kind of in response to COVID-19. So we're just going to touch on those briefly so you're aware. So anyone can apply for a mail-in ballot starting right now. So the original deadline was August 5th, but that's no longer the case. You can do it immediately. All of the websites are up to date, so you can go do that right after you finish watching this video, and encourage everyone you know to do the same. And also for anyone who is newly registering to vote, they can request a mail-in ballot at the same time. So they don't need to fill out any separate forms. It can all be in the same application, which is very convenient. So make sure that any new voter is knows that they have that option when they're registering to vote. And some voters will also be mailed a vote by mail application. So if they voted in the 3 most recent elections over the past few years, they'll get the paper application, as well as anyone who is newly registered to vote kind of in the span leading up to the election. But even if people don't receive this paper application, they can still vote by mail. They can print out an application, or they can do it online. The other main thing with this new legislation is that Election Day is a state holiday, which doesn't necessarily affect voter registration, but it is something that we should celebrate for 2020.
And this form is exactly what people are going to see. So once someone has filled in their commit to vote card, they're going to be given 2 prompts directly afterwards. They're going to commit to vote. They're going to say if they're a new registrant, if they're re-registering, or if they're already registered. And this is the one of the prompts that they're going to get. So if they say that they are a new registrant or they're re-registering, they click the prompt directly after this to register to vote. It's going to take them to this form, which is the online voter registration portal from the state of Illinois, from the State Board of Election. And it's going to give them a few instructions when they first begin. They should read over these instructions very carefully. It's basically saying they're a US citizen and a little other information, things that they're going to need before they start the voter registration. There's one thing that's very, very important, and you should discuss this with everyone as they're filling in this form, to make sure that they either have a driver's license or state ID. It's important that they select yes on this, because when they select yes on this, it's going to make things a lot easier for them at the polling location than other locations. If they're able to fill this in, they're going to be able to sign up to vote by mail right there on the spot, and they are going to be registered from this form where they won't have to show ID. So it's important that they do that. Not that someone can't find their driver's license or they don't want to dig out their driver's license. They absolutely should check yes for their driver's license. If they don't have their driver's license with them, they can use the last 4 of their social security number as well, where they can fill in one of the paper forms, but they're not necessarily registered to vote if they do that. And we want to make sure that they're registered right there. We'll have to do some matching within their particular clerk's office if they checked no and go through one of those other means. And we want to avoid that. We want to avoid people having to send in a copy of their ID or other things. We want them to go ahead and click yes, so that they are able to enter in their driver's license number and they are registered right there on the spot, and they're able to sign up for vote by mail as well. So if they click no, this is what they'll see, that driver's license or last 4 of their social is accepted, or they can get a copy of the mail-in voter registration form. So if someone does click yes, the next prompt they're going to be taken to is, are they a citizen, yes or no? And they should answer that particular question truthfully. There are some people, and this is what we have to be very careful of, that may be dreamers, that may not know. They may be unsure if they are a US citizen or not. If someone is unsure if they are a US citizen, it's best for them not to fill in this form. So that's something that should be clear. You know, what I like to say to people, if that is in fact true, go ahead and click yes, if it's in fact true. But if they're unsure, we don't want to create problems for anyone. If they're not sure, they should not go ahead and fill out this form. But if they are sure, they should go ahead and click yes. Also, are they 18 years of age, or will they be 18? Are they 17, or are they going to be 18 by election day? They'll go ahead and click yes on that. And then the options that they want to use. Are they currently registered and need to re-register at a different address? Is their name changed? Has their name and address changed, or are they a new registrant? I'm going to walk you through a couple of these forms, the ones that I think are the most important, then we're going to skip some of them. And then there's that driver's license or state ID, where they're able to enter that information, their date of birth, and their driver's license, the date that it was issued. It's important that they have that information. They're able to look on their ID and able to enter that particular set of information. Very important that they put that in. Then their name, they're able to enter in that information. They're able to enter in where they live, their current residence, and they're able to select what county they live in. There are some people that may not be aware of what county they're in, but this is something that can be looked up very easily from either your cell phone or their cell phone, just depending on where they live. Find out where they live, and you're able to help them with that set of information. We can register anyone in the state of Illinois with this form. They just need to put in their particular county so that the information goes to their particular election jurisdiction. Also, if their mailing address is different from their address, so if they need to get mail sent to a different address than where they currently live, they can put that information there. For example, if they're in a dorm or somewhere else out of state and they live here, their residence is here in Illinois, they can put in that particular mailing address. Now, once they complete this form, so anyone that is a new registrant, they're filling out this form, they can sign up to vote by mail right there on the spot. I would encourage people to sign up for vote by mail. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19, and we want to make voting as accessible and as easy as possible for people. So I would recommend if someone is going to be at their current address, they're not planning on moving at all, they should sign up for vote by mail so that they're able to get that vote by mail ballot right there at their home, and they're able to send that in without fear of going to a polling location. Also, we don't know what's going to happen, particularly with polling locations this time. If we have a resurgence of COVID, people may be afraid to be election judges, and there may be issues at some of the polling locations. So we want to try to get as many people as possible to vote by mail so that we are able to have everyone exercise their right to vote in as safe a way as possible. So they're able to sign up for that right here on the form if they're a new registrant. And once they complete the form, I don't have all of the form visible, but this is a form where all the information will be listed. Make sure that they look over that summary page very carefully to make sure all of the information is correct. And if it is, in fact, everything's correct, they're able to go ahead and affirm that and click the I'm not a robot option, and then they were able to submit that form in. And if someone uses the paper ballots, the motor voter or the mail-in forms. So if you're out at a large event, sometimes people just aren't going to have the technology. They're not going to have a smartphone with data. They're not able to scan the QR code, or they're not able to go online to the online form. We can have paper forms available for them. We're able to fill in the information on these particular forms, and I'm going to walk you all through a little bit of this. We prefer to use that online option, but sometimes you just can't use that online option. They either don't have a smartphone, or you don't have an extra tablet there where they can fill in the information there on the spot. So we can use these paper forms as well. What they're able to do with the paper forms, or they're able to fill in the information, and there are a couple of key required boxes. I would just tell everyone to fill in every box just to be on the safe side, but make sure that they're filling in a couple of key boxes. Again, that driver's license or ID number, they're filling that in, and if they don't have that, they can go ahead and put in the last four of their social. But again, it shouldn't be someone that they can't find their driver's license or ID, or they can't dig it out of their wallet or their purse. If they have it on them, they should enter it in. But if they don't, they can put in the last four digits of their social. Again, that's going to be a matter of the clerk's office being able to match that up. We want to make it as easy as possible. We don't want any excuse for these people not to be registered to vote. So I highly encourage people to put in their driver's license or ID number. They're able to fill in the information. And you can see some of the boxes that are required, which is their name, their complete address, their mailing address if it's different, their former name if it's changed, their date of birth, their gender, their home phone number. While it's not required and their email is not required, I would highly recommend that people fill in those particular boxes. And then their ID number. They should put in that ID number, preferably over the last four of the social, but if they don't have an ID, then they can put that in. It's just a matter of them matching it up, as I said, and them affirming that particular set of information. Again, those two key boxes I would highly recommend people fill in are their phone number, preferably their cell phone number, and then their email address. That way, if there is a problem, it's a lot easier for their election authority to contact them with the correct information to correct anything that may be wrong.
And so just to briefly talk about the vote by mail application that's separate from the voter registration application. This screenshot is from the Ballot Z website, like we were talking about, because each county clerk has their own form for the vote by mail. And the Illinois State Board of Elections has one on their website. But as of the last time I checked, it's really not the most up to date. Like when you go click on a county, it says like jurisdiction not found. But we know that the individual county clerks' websites, those work. So we definitely want to encourage voters to use those. So if you go to the Ballot Z website, which is linked at the end of the Commit to Vote form, and you click on any of these buttons, it'll take you directly to that county clerk's website. And then just to reiterate, make sure that voters know that their ballot can be sent to any address, not just the one that they're registered to vote at, which is especially important for anyone who will not be living at home in November. College students or anyone else who might be away at school or other places, they can get sent right to their door. They don't have to worry about getting it forwarded or anything like that.
So let's talk a little bit about just some of these events. If you're running an event, if you're a part of an organization, or if you have a group of your friends that wants to run a voter registration event and you want to get people out, you want to get people registered to vote, or you want to get them committing to vote, I should say. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you train people, you don't drag them through the process. If you all need a cheat sheet just on this training, or if you want to show them the video, it's something that you can do. But we have a cheat sheet that's available as well. If you just shoot us a message either via YouTube or email us, we'll be able to get that information out to you. But you want to run them through the training without it taking too long so that you're able to get them out to the location where they're going to register voters. You also want to make sure that you have their contact information so that they're able to contact you and they're able to contact each other. Also set very clear expectations with people. People aren't going to go out and get 1,000 voter registration forms. They may get 5 or 6, maybe 10, maybe 20 voter registration forms when they're out at these events. It's a small number, but there are going to be a lot of people that are out over the course of the election period, and they'll be able to collect a lot of voter registration and commit to vote cards at these various events. Also, start to call through people if you have them going out at a specific time, just to see how they're doing, to check in on them, and to make sure that everything's going well and that they actually return in a timely fashion if they're using any of the paper forms, so that you have that information back. You want to make sure that you get that back so that we're able to turn that into the election authority itself. So anyone that takes a paper ballot out, we are going to collect that from them, and we're going to make sure that we hand deliver that information or mail it in to them. Don't leave it with them, because the likelihood that that form is going to get handed in is going to be somewhat lower if it's left with them. We want to make sure that we get that information directly into the election authority itself. You also want to set yourself up to get data entry done in as quick a fashion as possible. So people that use any kind of paper, we have a paper commit to vote form as well. We want to make sure that we get all of that information in so that we're able to do that extensive follow-up with people. You also want to make the commit to ask in the correct way. And it's a couple of things that are going to help you to be very successful in this. And it's, you want to be approachable. Don't wait to be approached. This is where a lot of organizations fail. They may sit behind a table and they wait for people to approach them. If you do that, a lot of people aren't going to approach you. You really have to go up to people and talk with them just about this commit to vote, but you want to do it in as safe a way as possible, especially with COVID-19 going on right now. You going up to people and you making the ask in the correct way can be the difference between you getting 5 and 10 forms. So always think about that. You also want to seem approachable. You're going to have on a mask while you're doing this. It's required that you wear a mask while you're out registering these voters, so people won't necessarily be able to see your smile, but they can sense it on you. They can sense that you're approachable. They can see it in your eyes. Also, make the commit to vote ask in the correct way. So everyone that we talk to, we want to get them to commit to vote, whether they're registered already, whether they're a new registrant, or even if they're just want to sign up for vote by mail. We want to get them all to commit to vote right away, because those are going to be people that we're able to follow up with details about the election, and we're able to tie into our voter protection program. So that's very important. Anyone that you see, if you're going out to a large rally, or if you're in the community and you're registering people, you want to ask them, can we get you to commit to vote in the upcoming election? And in addition to can we get you to commit to vote, is your voter registration up to date? So can we get you to commit to vote is really your first ask with everyone. You're getting them to commit to vote in the upcoming election. Everyone should want to commit to vote. And the second is your voter registration up to date? And in addition to that, would you like to sign up for vote by mail? Never ask anyone, are you registered to vote? Sometimes people can take that as offensive, that you're assuming that they're not registered to vote, or they can be embarrassed if they're with a group of their friends and they're not registered to vote. They may be embarrassed that they're not registered to vote. But if you're saying, can we get you to commit to vote? Everyone's going to want to commit to vote. We're going to be able to follow up with them on that. Is your voter registration up to date? Not only is your voter registration up to date, but is your voter registration up to date at their current address? It really gets them to think. You know, they may be registered to vote, but they may be registered to vote at their dorm in New York and not where they currently live in Illinois. So we want to make sure that we have that particular, have them registered to vote right here in Illinois. And also, are you signed up to vote by mail so that they can get their ballot sent to them at their home? That way they don't have to worry about any kind of lines during early vote or having to go out to the polling location if there's a resurgence of COVID. Typically, I like to catch people when they're in line. So if there's an event, if there's a march or anything else going on, catching people while they're in lines, you know, DMVs and shopping centers are good locations, typically in a time where there isn't COVID. But since there is COVID, you know, we want to be careful in how we do these things. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to be careful a little later. So be strategic for your particular locations. As you remember, as I said, when we're registering people, we're registering everyone at every location, but we want to be strategic about where we're registering people. So we're not going to go to some specific locations and register people. We're not going to go to a Trump rally, for example, and register voters there. It's just not a good location to register voters. We want to make sure there are 2 Democrats for every 1 Republican that we register to vote. And we can do that by picking key locations. So there's a Democratic event, we want to go there and help to register and get people committed to vote. If there's a Black Lives Matter rally, for example, we'll probably want to go to that location because those are probably people that reflect our values. If there's an environmental rally, we'll probably want to go to that and help get people to commit to vote at that particular location. So just be very strategic about the particular locations that you're going. You probably don't want to go to, as I mentioned, a Trump rally or a don't wear mask in Illinois rally to register people to vote. That's not going to be a location that's going to be beneficial to us. So we don't want to go there. You know, other people can go there and register voters there. We just don't want to go there and register voters. We also want to think about the locations that you are registering people. So if you're going to a hotspot location that tends to be good for people to get them to commit to vote, people that reflect our values, that place isn't going to be good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you want to think about when are good times to go to that location and make kind of a chart of those times. You also want to make rounds of specific locations. So if you send people out to a location, you might want to move them around at that particular location. You might want to send them to that location and then have a couple of other locations spotted out so that they're able to hit that one location and then move on to a new location.
We also have a couple of ways we want to make sure for the in-person contact that you're being as safe as possible, because your safety is obviously the most important thing, and the safety of everyone around you. So always 100% of the time when you're out in public, wear the mask and gloves, and always do your best to keep 6-foot distance. It might be a little hard at points, but try to keep that distance as much as you can. Really, we want to prevent spread of any disease for sure. But also, in addition to just protecting yourself and kind of that personal equipment, you're going to hand out pens for the paper registration forms, and make sure you wipe down those pens with disinfectant after each use. There will be other people touching them. Just wipe them down after each use, and that should be fine. And also just encourage other people to distance as well. Put out hand sanitizer at tables. We were at a protest where someone had a donation of masks so we could hand out extra masks to people. So just things like that to keep in mind. And then on your clipboard, you could have the QR code and like the voter registration form. So people could just take a picture of that, and kind of minimizing the like handing off and the contact that way would work really well.
Also, with the QR codes, you can put them on a big sign too. So if you have a table, you have a big sign, you can put it on a big sign or a big banner for your location where people can see it from far away. So let's talk about some of the locations that tend to be good field tested locations that we know work as locations. A little different with COVID right now, but think we're going to do voter registration once we have a vaccine for COVID as well at a later point. So rallies are great locations to collect voter registration and commit to vote forms. So if there's a accountability forum, a Black Lives Matter rally, we want to be at all of those locations, and we want to be registering voters at those particular rallies. Also think of public transportation, bus stops, other locations. You know, we want to be camped outside of some of those locations, and we want to be registering voters in some of those locations as well to get people to commit to vote. DMVs are good locations, especially during the opening hours and during lunch breaks, you know, where you can stand your distance and get people signed up. You know, laundromats, shopping centers, libraries, those are better locations outside of COVID. Libraries may still be good locations if you have your QR code available, you're able to sign people up there. Also think of religious institutions, so churches, mosques, temples, that we're able to register voters at those particular locations. As long as you're outside, you can't be in the sanctuary registering people to vote, but you can be outside in the parking lot if you can set up a table at those particular locations, or in an annex building or in the basement area somewhere. You can be there and you can register voters there. Those tend to be great locations to register voters at these particular locations. Also, naturalization ceremonies, once those start back up again, we definitely want to be there to help to get people to commit to vote at those locations. College campuses and high schools, we want to be at all of those locations in the district and beyond, helping to register students. It's great if you team up with the student organization on any of these types of campuses or schools to help with that voter registration. So those are great opportunities for voter registration. Concerts, festivals, and parks, once those reopen, we'll want to be at those locations as well. You know, again, we want to be careful of what type of concerts, what type of festivals that we're at. Remember the golden rule about our ratio of people that we want to register, you know, 2 Democrats for every 1 Republican. When we're out registering people, we register everyone. When we're registering people, we just want to be strategic about where we're going to register people. We want people that reflect our values. Also, job fairs, courthouses, and food drives. Food drives are great locations right now. There are a lot of job fairs. Some of the courthouses are starting to reopen, and there are a lot of food drives that are going on. So those are locations that we want to register people to vote. Also, apartment complexes are great places. If you know an apartment complex, you can set up the QR code outside. You can put them on the doors. If you live in an apartment complex, you can put it up. That way people are able to register to vote right there as they're leaving and entering the building, or just at their doors themselves within your building, or a building that you may have access to. You're able to get people to register there. Also, any kind of clubhouses, if you have a relationship with the owners there, you can set that up and people can register to vote at those particular locations. Coffee shops are also tend to be good locations. There's a lot of flow of traffic. If you know a business owner, you should try to get them to talk to their clients about registering to vote. So think about different locations. Definitely think about, you know, minority-owned businesses. Think about, you know, African American or Latino or South Asian barbers, for example. Those are great places if you have a relationship with them to talk with them about their clients and getting their clients registered to vote. You know, they tend to talk to their clients. They have good relationships with them. They're talking to them for a large amount of time. If they have the QR code right there, they can talk to all of their clients about registering to vote. Also think bakeries, Latino bakeries or taquerias are great locations, ice cream shops to registered voters. We need to think about these particular places, building relationships with the owners of these businesses, and getting those owners of the businesses to actually conduct some of this voter registration, since they've already built in a relationship. So they can get them to commit to vote, filling in the commit to vote form, and then either registering to vote or signing up for vote by mail. Those are great ways for us to get out into the community and get as many people registered to vote as possible. Another thing is, think about when you're having these voter registration drives, making swings of particular locations. So if you're out, you're at a location, you've registered everyone at a particular location, it's time to move on to the next location. So I typically like to have 3 or 4 locations lined up and then make swings of those various locations. If I go to, the train stop or a bus stop and I register everyone there, then I might swing to a bakery and register everyone at that particular location, then go to the ice cream shop and register everyone there, and then maybe to a barber shop. So I like to make those swings of different locations and register everyone possible at those various locations, and then move on to the next location. Also, ask people in the community on locations. There may be locations that you're not even thinking of to register voters, that other people that have different places where they may go within the community, or different relationships, they may know these great locations where we can register people within the community, or they may have a relationship with those particular business owners, and those people can do the voter registration.
So that was kind of our overview of the in-person techniques, but also equally as important is the virtual canvassing that we're going to be doing because of COVID-19, which is a little bit less tested than some of our other methods, which means we get to be a little bit more creative in how we do this. So definitely attend the in-person events when you can, but also look to other avenues that you haven't tried before, but you think like, oh, I could try to reach a voter that way, and see if it works, and please let us know if it does. So some of these include phone banks, like we were talking about, where you could call through unregistered voter lists, our commit to vote lists, but also social media. So there's a lot of really good voting content online from places like Ballot Z, League of Women Voters. Lots of places just have good resources about voting. So post frequently and share that content just to kind of keep voting at the top of people's minds. But you could also use the commit to vote form specifically when you're doing social media. So you could use Facebook Messenger, so you could go send that out to your contacts, like a handful of contacts at a time. Just send them the link and encourage them to commit to vote. Super easy, it would take just a couple seconds. Also on Twitter and Instagram specifically, you have your profile, and you can include a link in your profile. So when people go click on your profile, they could see the commit to vote form right there. And you could always kind of send people to your profile, send people to your bio to click on links. And that's another good way to kind of get that out there as much as possible. And then we talked about this at the beginning as well, but build that reputation among your friends and family as the person to go to for voting. They'll go to you with questions, and then they'll encourage them to commit to vote and to pass that on to their friends and family, and kind of use that networking you have built in among your just closest contacts, and it'll spread really quickly and get the word out there as much as possible. And then finally, just because this is kind of uncharted territory in a certain sense, please let us know what has worked for you. If you've tried a kind of creative method, encourage other people. We're all in this together. We all want to get out as many voters as possible. So yeah, on the next slide, we have, I think, a little bit more about social media, so we can show you some more specific examples. So I pulled some of these from my personal social media accounts, because I'm a big voting nerd and have always tried to get people out on my social media to vote, and some from the Ballot Z account. So you can see in the left-hand corner, there's an infographic about the security of vote by mail, because I know a lot of people were concerned about that, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So just kind of clarifying that and giving people really reliable voting sources is something we really, really want to encourage. The one in the middle is my Instagram stories. So you can see like there's a countdown to the registration deadline. So kind of unique ways all related to voting, just to keep people engaged. And also on Instagram, you can see there's actually a sticker that'll link them to a voter registration as well. So Instagram and Facebook even have tools built right into the site of how to reach more voters. Also on the far right, you can see there's a video about the new voting legislation, because a lot of people are confused about what that meant for the upcoming election, so kind of clarifying things that way. So if you share this kind of voting content with your social media network. And not only gives them more reliable information, but also kind of reinforces that social norm of voting. Like, oh, everyone I see on Facebook is talking about voting. Like, that means I actually have to get out there and vote in November. So their social media is a really, really useful tool to reach voters in both ways.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the next steps. So if you're interested, please let us know. We'll send you out information. If you're watching this video a little bit later on and you weren't part of our initial training that we did earlier this week, we're going to send out information, so you can either message us on YouTube or you can email us, and we'll send you a list of various events that are happening across the district where you can help us with that. If you're interested in setting up your own commit to vote event, let us know and we can help you out with that. If you're interested in digital canvassing, where you're going out and talking to people online and using the QR code, we can get you that information. If you want to help us with phone banking, if you want to share posts, or if you'd like to help with data entry, we'll be able to get you that particular information. We're going to send you out a QR code sheet, training materials, a Know Your Right sheet, and then a paper version of the vote by mail, voter registration and commit to vote cards, and the information about our voter protection line a little bit later on as we get closer to the election itself, so that you're able to follow up in that way. So I definitely want you all, thank you for watching the entire video with us here today. I hope that this was informative for you and that you're going to be able to help us get people to commit to vote to increase voter turnout. Please make sure that if you're not already, that you like this video and that you're subscribing and clicking the bell for our YouTube channel. That way you're going to get information on any of the town halls that we have coming up or any additional trainings via YouTube. It'll help us out immensely by being able to push that information out to as many people as possible, so that we're able to really increase the amount of voter engagement all across the district in the Chicagoland area. Also, please make sure that you like us on our social media accounts. So at Sixth Dems for the Sixth Dems, and Ballot Z for Ballot Z. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube and Twitter. So make sure that you follow us all there at those particular places so that you get even more information. If you're interested in emailing us, you can email us at sixthdems@gmail.com for more information. Gretchen?
Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you so much for your help. This is so important, one of the most critical things we can do for November. So every effort that you're putting in is super helpful, and we really appreciate it. And if you have any more questions about Ballot Z, specifically, you can email us at questions@ballot-z.org, or just check out our website or social media and contact us through any of those channels as well.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. We are excited about this election cycle. We're going to carry this on into this election cycle and carry it right on into 2021. So thank you all for joining us. Have a good rest of the day, and we're excited about creating that blue wave. Thank you.